Welcome to Why Not Both? This podcast is about the way that our multiple passions inform our identity. My name is Pam Shaffer, and I'm a musician, therapist, and tutor living in Los Angeles. Each week, I interview people about the ways that the multiple things they love inform who they are as people. You can learn more about this podcast as well as our guests on our website, which is wnbpodcast.com. You can also find us on social media, such as Instagram or Twitter, under the handle WNB The Podcast. Thank you so much for your support. It really helps us out when you like and subscribe to us on your preferred podcast platform. So not only do you get the latest episodes, but other people can see us as well. Thank you again, and I really hope you enjoyed this week's interview. Today I have with me Anousha Hutton. She is a visual artist, a tarot reader, and a director. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Pam.
Thank you for driving all the way out here.
Yeah, you're welcome. No, it's always a pleasure to be around you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you. So the first question that I've been asking everyone is, what do you do? And the second part of that question is there a better question to ask you than what do you do?
Okay, well, I do a lot of different things. I've been doing a lot of different things, really, through my life. One of the things that's been consistent with my kind of explorations has been my photography. And pretty much since I was, God, I don't know, probably like maybe 12, I have been consistently taking pictures. So photography has always been kind of my main passion.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of, branching out into tarot.
Mm-hmm.
I've been reading tarot since I was 7. And then, now kind of branching out into directing. So I do a bit of everything. I'm very passionate about kind of two main areas. The first one being my spiritual work, and the second one being more predominantly surrounding my visual art.
Which one do you want to explain to listeners first? Which one do you think people would be more curious about?
They're both pretty extensive, but I mean, maybe we could start with my visual art.
Sure.
Seeing as that kind of ties into also the spiritual gift that I was born with. So, I'm not sure where to begin. Okay. It's hard for me to summarize my journey, but I'll explain in a little bit. So I was born with a gift in my eyes that it enables me to see energy. And so I was born with this gift and this ability. And so it's one of the reasons why I found photography so helpful for me, because I was really able to use the medium of photography to convey what I saw and how I saw uniquely in the world. So that's why it was always such a good release for me.
Well, and then you can communicate that vision to other people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was always like a great release for me, and a way of communication. So yeah. So, okay, I'm going off track. What?
You're all good. You just explained the visual part.
Yeah, okay, the
and
visual
I was like,
part.
oh, that actually does lead well
Yeah.
into then the spiritual part, because I think that some people either misunderstand or have misapprehensions about spiritual work and about tarot.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I always use tarot as a side discipline. So predominantly my gifts kind of kicked into play using photographs. So funnily enough, with my spiritual work, I was always, for the most part, using photographs as a way to see somebody.
I see.
So I use the tarot as a side discipline, as a medium of sorts, to help inquire further about what's going on for somebody. But for the most part, I just, throughout my career as a reader, was channeling. So I would just look at a photograph and then I would see the energy, and I would also see I would also hear messages, and I would let that person know what was coming through.
Yeah, I remembered that was really distinctive about your method of reading, that you were the first person I'd heard of that read using photographs.
Yeah. Yeah, I've met a couple of readers that work with the police,
Mm-hmm.
that do the same thing as me. And also, sometimes they use, instead of a photograph, they will use a lock of hair. That's another way that
Oh.
they can tap into energy and get a closer feel as to what's going on for that person. For me personally, although I am very sensitive to items, like if I touch vintage couch that belonged to a spirit, I usually
Mm-hmm.
know the spirit or can meet the spirit, so I have to be careful. But for the most part, I just was able to access through photography, through photographs, my that's really how I orchestrated my readings. Because at the beginning of my career, I was going around in an Uber in LA when I sort of started doing this professionally, and it kicked in very quickly. I did one reading for somebody, and then I quit my job that same week. I was working at a hotel, and I quit my job that week, and then I was in business. I
Wow.
was doing multiple readings per week, and at the time, I didn't quite understand my recovery. So I would get an Uber and I would drive to I would get in an Uber, go to that person's house, and then the Uber would come pick me up. But of course, I'm a trance medium, so basically I go into trance. And so because I
Got
was
it.
in trance, I'm
Oh
walking around being like,
no.
where am I? What year is it? How do I order an Uber? Like, it was a bit of a
Oh
nightmare. So at the end I said, I just cannot Uber to clients anymore. So that was when I decided, okay, I'll just do photographs. And
no.
it
Okay.
worked really great.
That makes more sense because
Yeah.
that sounds really disorienting.
It was, but I kind of realized pretty early on that okay, that's not going to work. And so after that, and like I didn't do parties or things like that with like numerous people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't ever really able to do that. It wasn't that kind of a session, and so I enjoyed working from home, and then I would look at the pictures and record it, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what I did for about close to 4 years. So
Wow.
that was my consistent day job. And so my boyfriend at the time was very used to it. I mean, it was my day job. So,
Mm-hmm.
I had a long recovery time after the
Mm-hmm.
sessions where, I would need KFC and a big Coke and put my feet up, and that was the only thing that would get me back in my body. And then the next morning I'd wake up and be like, oh, I don't remember anything I
Yeah,
said.
I'd be like, oh, I'm
Okay.
back.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, it was definitely a really, really it was an amazing time in my life, and left me with a lot of inspiration for what I'm creating next. So
That's actually what I was curious about was that it sounds like such an intense experience and that it does overlap with photography that I was like, did that add to your visual repertoire or did it diminish your energy that you could then put back into your art?
yeah, I didn't take a picture throughout the entire time. So I basically pulled back entirely and decided to completely devote my life to helping other people with this gift. And so I took a break,
Mm-hmm.
and I experienced a lot during the time of healing other people, and I'm extremely grateful.
Mm-hmm.
I look back on this experience, and with a lot of grateful feelings, and I'm very excited to get to work as what's next because
I
yeah.
was like, are you allowed to share at all about
Yeah.
what's next?
Yeah. So just kind of during everything that was going on in my life, I lived in a temple alone for a bit. And during that time, okay, so this temple was it was one of the original prayer temples with this Theosophical Society, Blavatsky. Any witches that are listening to this, Blavatsky, darling. Okay, come on.
She's wonderful and
The
very authoritative when she speaks. I like that you just channeled a bit of her right there from her recordings. That when
I do
she's
have a
so
tendency.
directive.
Yes. Well, I actually was born 2 minutes away from where she died. And I did a lot of research into her. Anyway, I'm a massive fan. Blavatsky, love her. Anyway, so basically, I lived in this temple. And at the time, I was doing my readings, and it was such a great time in my life. I was healing, I was doing my readings, I was running my own business for the first time, and that was really empowering for me, just sharing my gifts and then being able to receive from those. So, and basically, I wrote my series. So, in the temple. So basically, I wrote my series Visions in the temple, and I was living there alone. And I had multiple friends, of course, all of my guides who were living, you being one of them. I came over, and it was very like that. This space for me was like that. It was like the people that came through the space or that time in my life were very influential they were very influential on my path. So yes, I wrote my series Visions in the temple, and Visions is what I'm up to next. It's a I don't want to call it horror, but I guess it kind of is horror. It's probably scared quite a few people, but it's not really horror. It's really kind of my own world, but if you're into horror, you're gonna love it. But yeah, it's my world basically. It's like David Lynch meets Twilight Zone, and putting my own unique spin on my own unique apocalyptic weird world. And each episode is under 10 minutes. And each episode is really different. It's different characters, it's different stories, and yeah, so that's what I'm up to next.
Well, that sort of speaks to one of the questions I had in mind was like, how do you define yourself? Because it's interesting that you said that you defined Visions as horror, whereas like I feel very special that I've heard like sneak previews. To me, it doesn't sound like when I think of horror, I think of like either jump scares or occasionally I think of,
Right.
Maybe existential horror.
Yeah.
Whereas when I hear it, what I feel is more of like the influence of the shadow self, but I don't find the shadow self necessarily horrifying.
Yeah.
And so I was curious, like, how do you define yourself in the context of someone who has crafted this series as someone who has experienced the visions and informed visions?
That's a very good question. So how do I define myself in the respect of, you mean in the respect of whether this series is horror or?
Yeah, like are you a horror creator or are you a channeler of different kinds of energy? Because you just said each of the episodes were so different.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, that's so fascinating.
Yes.
Are they all different aspects of things that you've seen or things you've experienced?
Yes, they very much are.
Yeah.
They are. They're each of my characters and stories is very much, comes through in the same way that it would in a reading, where I don't know, I mean, all my friends can vouch for this, but that I just live in a weird world. Okay. All of my friends, they're like, okay, I love Anousha, but she is, she's in her own thing. And that's the thing is I have my own world and I understand that. I'm, probably part alien at this point. I'm learning how to be a human. But
I love that all the memes we send each other are like, how do you person? how to human?
No, we both are. It's the Aquarius alien thing, alien complex. But yeah, I mean, that's a good question about horror and stuff like that. I'm really into horror, and when I was growing up, my dad was very influential for me with showing me a lot of horror movies. So when I was growing up, my mother was a spiritualist and very into tarot, and she taught me a lot about psychic energy, and she is a seer as well. So, my father was an atheist, but he was massively into horror. So I was like 6 years old watching The Exorcist and never scared.
Casual.
No, just casually. Never scared. Always intrigued. And horror lit my imagination up in a way that as a child, it lit something up in me. And so I never would feel scared. I don't know. But it's funny. the irony is, like, there have been times in my career where, like, I have, seen some, I've seen some pretty scary shit.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what's funny is that I can't go on ghost rides. I can't go in the, I can't, when I go to the fair, I've been to the fair before, but I can't go on the ghost rides.
So we're never going to take you to a haunted
No,
mansion.
nothing haunted, nothing. And that's what's so funny is I'm like, Anousha, you literally slay demons.
You're like, but a haunted hayride. Oh, no.
I mean, no, I'm a wimp when it comes to those things. Anyway, so I thought that was funny. But
oh my God.
But yeah, so it's not horror, but it is. It's like, look, if you like horror, you're going to love Visions, I'm sure. But it's not the kind, my horror is my own horror. I want to create a whole new wave of horror. What happened to me was the late John Schnapp. For those of you who don't know who John Schnapp is, look him up. He was an amazing creative soul.
I will link to him.
Yes,
yeah, I can put in links to whatever you like.
You should.
The website, so I will include his.
Yes, please do. John actually passed away a few years ago. Oh no, like maybe a year ago.
Oh, I recall. He was working with you on.
Yes. So my point being is that like my show Visions is, very closely linked to the spirit of John Schnapp. And I'd like to just take a moment to just speak about John.
Mm-hmm.
Because John, I kind of doubted myself when I was writing the series. I'm like, this is weird, people aren't going to get it. Yeah, I wrote one script, ironically, on Dennis Hopper's bed. I got gifted one of Dennis Hopper's bed from a friend of mine, and I was living off of Hollywood Boulevard at the time. And I wrote my first script, which was Blitzed, which was about twins that lived in a clown motel. And I remember, and I wrote the script in literally like 2 nights.
Wow.
I wrote the whole first episode on the bed. And of course it was Dennis Hopper's bed, so it was weird. So I was kind of in my head about it, like, is anyone gonna get this?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I should just stick to photography. And at the time, I just was like shooting with a flashlight. That was my thing. So long story cut short, I met John, and John was very, very influential in helping me move forward with Visions. So I met him, and he said, I'm a big fan of your photography. And I said, oh, thank you so much. I'm writing the series. Mm-hmm. May I send you the script? And he was a big guy in horror, he really knew his horror. And I looked up to him, and he said, yeah, send me the scripts. So I sent him the scripts. I sent him the first 2, Beats and Dreams, which was my pilot, and Blitz. And a couple of days went by. And you know how everyone is in Hollywood. It's like, yeah, send me the scripts. And then nobody reads the scripts.
Reads anything.
Yeah, nobody reads anything. Or they get back to you in a year and they're like, oh, yeah, it was great. And they didn't read it. So anyway, a couple of days goes by. And John messages me and he says, hi, read the scripts. This is some of the most unique horror I've ever read. Can we meet for coffee like tomorrow? So when he said that, something changed in me, and I was like, wow, John Schnapp said my horror was cool. So I went to go meet with him, and he was really the person that, he was the person that really helped make, like, my show is really in tribute, to John, and I give thanks to his soul, because without him, none of this transformation would be happening. And yeah, he helped convince, he prepared me and told me, you need to move forward with this. It needs to happen. So
that's so powerful. Like when someone especially someone you respect, when someone believes in what you're doing, like all of a sudden, because I do think that sometimes there's a cultural narrative of like, oh, you have to push yourself. It has to be you that's self-propelled. You define yourself. But in a way, it's like we get some of our self-definition from the outside world.
Yes.
And it sounds like having him believe in you triggered you to be like, oh, I can do this. This is valid. I do
Yes.
believe in myself.
Yes. I definitely, I think it was just that I knew that he knew his horror. I knew that he knew what he was doing, and when he told me that, everything changed for me, and I was like, "Oh, I really do need to move forward with this."
Mm-hmm.
So I took a little bit of time though, because I was making my product line, and that was a huge part of my life for a long while, was the development of my products.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. We haven't even
yeah,
spoken about those.
I haven't even spoken about those. Yeah, yeah.
I was just like, oh, yeah, because you have the anointing oils
Mm,
and or like you had such a beautiful product line, but it
yeah.
sounds like, and we'll explain, I guess, briefly to the listeners, you made all these products and have decided to now
Yeah,
not for other people as much. Like what happened basically?
yeah. So basically, um, during the time that I was reading full time, so okay, I was in trance 4 days a week, and my boyfriend at the time, he knew that,
Mm-hmm.
and so basically Monday to Thursday I wasn't in my body. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday I was in my body.
Yeah.
So that was the way our home operated. Very surreal, but he understood. So anyway, during that time, I I would use the money that I would make from my readings to develop my own oils. I was in trance one day, and then I made my grounding oil.
Mm-hmm.
So I made my grounding oil. It helped me get back in my body faster. And then I basically developed an entire line of 6 different energies that I wanted to create for myself. So I created 6 energy essential oil products. These come in the form of sprays and oils and bar salts, and they include crystals. So I basically spent, I put all of my money into stocking up on essential oils, making my own recipes, brewing, figuring out the perfect blend of essential oils. And so I spent quite a bit of time developing the line, and then I sort of, well, things got very full on, because all of a sudden I realized that I had kind of created an empire, and I needed to be like, okay, well, you've created an empire, but now you need to take a step back and figure out what you're going to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you create something big, you got to realize why. What is your intent? And so that's what I needed to do. So I took some time off. I started to just trade with friends and people that I knew, because I love making potions. I've been making potions since I was a kid. I love trading with
Yeah.
my friends and making potions for my friends. And so I do that still, more custom work and more custom experience for the client. But funnily enough, when I took time off, that's when I basically decided I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to make art. I'm not going to do my products. I'm just not going to do anything. All I'm going to do is rest and kind of meditate. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just get clear. So I spent several months just doing nothing. And during that time, clarity ensued. So with my product line, I've really decided to I want to help the world with my products. So in any way that I can. So I have partnered with numerous people who are involved in humanitarian efforts and activist causes. And I will be partnering, the Anousha products will be partnering with different organizations and different things that are going on in the world that need support. And so my humanitarian work is going to be taking up quite a lot of my time moving forwards. Although it's one of
Mm.
those things that I just need to get clear on the direction, of why am I doing this?
Yeah. That's what
Yeah.
struck me, that it's almost like There's multiple paths that you've described, and they do feel very unified in your like in your intent to help others and also to share your visions with others. But there is the time and effort issue of like
Yeah.
there's only one of you. So it's like how much time and effort can you devote to each of these things
Yes.
without accidentally draining yourself
Yes.
or only doing like partial service to what you want to bring to fruition.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like what my mother said, one step at a time, and this is going to be a lifelong path,
Right.
right? So, one of the things is that in our culture we feel very rushed always, and of course with the introduction of technology, now it's like instant, everything is instant. It's like, okay, if I don't have the vision that I had perfectly executed within this time frame, therefore it has failed.
right. It's
Like
very all or nothing.
it's very all or nothing. So then when I took a step back and I was like, actually, taking a step back, even though I felt at the time, and being real with everyone, I felt like I had failed by taking a step back. And there is this perception within society where when you stop something, therefore it equates to, in your mind, failure, especially in the Western world. When you stop doing something, it may equate to feelings of failure. But sometimes that's the gateway to success, is when you have the courage to slow down, pull away, stop, and trust. Because then when we move into a deeper space of trust, is, you're no longer fearing the absence of your success.
I like that phrase. You're no longer fearing the absence of your success.
Right. That when you trust that your creations will succeed, there is no rush. And that was what I personally learned by pulling back. And then when the clarity came in, I was so grateful that I had taken that time off. But yes, it can feel like when you've been sent here to do a lot, which so many of us have, and especially also in this new society that we live in, which is very much like, oh, we're all doing a ton of different things and expressing ourselves in multiple different ways. So it can feel a bit spread thin. But I tried to avoid that by carving out time to recharge. And I do that more as a mandatory effort now.
Yeah, because it sounds like it's interesting that you said that with the product line, when you had taken time away from it, that at first you felt that you had in some ways failed.
Yes.
Whereas it sounds like with photography, when it sounds like you did take a step back from photography when you were doing more with your mediumship, that it doesn't sound at all like you felt a sense of failure with that.
I always knew that I would come back to it. Photography is throughout my lifetime, the camera will always be with me, and that's just, it's a lifelong commitment and contract that I've exchanged. I feel that it is my destiny, and yes, but I knew that I needed to experience some other stuff. I had like spent years and years and years carving out my aesthetic and how I wanted to communicate, and what was that like. And I knew that when I would go back to it, it would not be the same way. So I was like, okay, take
Because
a
you'd
step
have all
back.
this new information.
Yeah, new information, different resources, different support systems, and different people around me to help support that. So I knew that when I would go back that it would be different.
And that speaks to like I talked to other guests about like support that they've received and also like the role of commerce because
Yeah.
money is very important in Western society.
Yes.
And so sometimes I know that other people I talked to had talked about like the importance of a day job or financial security
Yes.
or things like that. Do you think that in any way like finances or support have informed some of these choices?
I will say that everything that you experience in your life is preparation. I believe that my lack of support and my lack of finances were the gateway
Mm.
into my success.
Yes.
And so I actively give thanks every day because during my journey, I had very little financially around me, and it was very hard. But
Yeah.
I will say that had I have had money around me during the time in which I created my art,
Right.
I would not have made the art that I had made. I wouldn't have understood my aesthetic. The irony of the situation is the only way that I made this art was from a $10 flashlight. That was the only thing that I
remember
had.
that when you had the flashlight and
Yeah,
the little.
I used to
thing
wear
on
a
your
flashlight
head.
on my head. I still do. I wear a flashlight on my head. I'll shine a $10 flashlight. That's how I made everything. So if you go to my website, you'll be able to see everything on there is made with a flashlight. And I'm so grateful. I look back on my life now and I think, God, I was so stressed all the time at the surrender and being like, I don't have anything other than this fucking flashlight, you know?
This one treasured flashlight.
Yes, this treasured flashlight. But, you know, I really learned. I learned how to become a master. You know, sometimes hardship prepares you to become a master at what you do. So the reality is that anytime you start thinking, oh my gosh, my situation would be so much easier if I had money, if I had this, if I had that, if I had this team, just remember that the hardships make you a master. If you want to be the best, embrace the challenges. Don't run from them, embrace them, because if you paralyze yourself in the fear of it all, you won't create. And the key is every time you feel scared, just create.
Just create something.
Just create, because when you move into the creation energy, whatever it is, right? Because you are the master of your own energy. So wherever you put it, you could be paralyzed in fear because nothing is certain, you know? So that degree of uncertainty is very scary, especially when you are an entrepreneur or when you are like, you are a visionary person or a creative person and there's all this uncertainty and it's like, fuck, you know, I don't have any money. It's scary. But again, I think so an artist that I know, I said to him recently at a meeting that we recently had, he's a very, very, he's an artist I look up to. And I said to him, it's been a very long road of struggle for me, you know, to reach this place in my life, to reach this place, right? And he said, well, it won't feel like a long road at the end. And I kind of thought about that for a minute.
You're like, oh yeah, because I'm not at the end.
Put it in perspective. Put it in perspective. The reality of the situation is that whilst you may feel gripped by lack at times, because we all do, we're all human beings. We all go through that at one point or another, and it's tough. But the reality of the situation is it's just a moment. So the key to the discipline, I believe, is just to not engage so much in the permanence, rather just to take a look at life, however it may be reflected to you in this moment, and accept that it is just a moment.
That's exactly. It's funny that you spoke to the permanence issue because this weekend I played my first show in like a year and a half, which
Right.
was great. But the setup was awful. I got there and one of my stands literally exploded, like nuts and bolts everywhere. Had to
Oh, wow.
duct tape it back together.
It must have been your energy.
Oh my God.
You're making
seriously.
microphones explode,
Oh my
Pam.
God. It just like, boo. I was like, I didn't even know that could happen.
That's
but-
hilarious.
So I'm like, okay, this is unsettling, but I'm going to
Yeah.
sit down and try and set up my setup, which has like 70 cables. So I'm plugging everything in and everything is like vaguely working, but not quite.
Yeah.
And so I was really concentrated, but was very distressed because my stand exploded. And so the sound guy comes over and he like kind of peers down at me and he says, how are you doing? And I just looked up and I said, very poorly, but everything is temporary.
Yeah.
And he looked slightly frightened because I think he meant like I was like, we're all going to die one day. But like what I actually meant was like, this feels bad right now.
Yeah.
But it's not always going to feel bad. There probably will be other times that I feel bad / frustrated / whatever. But there's
sure.
also going to be times that I feel other things. So I know that even though I'm feeling that right now, that it's not going to last forever. There's like that uncertainty principle is scary, but it also gives you possibility.
Absolutely.
Because I'm like, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life on this gallery floor plugging in my gear. This is temporary.
Yeah.
It sucks.
For sure.
But it's temporary.
Yeah, it is. Just always remember that it is temporary. And then you look back and you're like, oh, wow, I don't have any regrets or
Right.
like any like, it's all part of the imperfect path that we all live, you know. Imperfection is a reality
Exactly.
of there is no way of this lifetime being linear or the way that we expect it to be crafted. You know, we're all doing our best.
Exactly. Sometimes we explode instrument stands.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fine. That's totally fine. What do you feel that you have learned the most on this path, both from photography and from the mediumship and from the product line? That's 3. It's like the Spanish Inquisition of
Yeah.
things popping up.
Yeah, I know. Welcome to my life. Yeah, what have I learned the most? I've learned so much, but I suppose I've learned some different things in the multiple disciplines or areas of my interest. But the one thing that remains carved in between them all, is authenticity is the most important thing, and honesty, you know, and staying true to you, staying true to yourself, staying true to your own vision, and authenticity is my number one. I'm always pushing for that. I'm always pushing to find that within myself, and I'm always pushing to reveal that to others. And so I definitely, authenticity would probably be the thing that
Like the
combines all of them.
Through thread.
Yeah.
That
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, and also, you know, I just love to I believe that it is our infinite right to live our dream. So my life is basically constructed around my dreams, you know, either through my art, which is all about my dream life. But then like I consciously live spiritually in a dream, and that's the way I like to live. Now, sometimes that's kind of tough when I'm learning how to be a human.
She says with dramatic understatement.
But you know, if I could concentrate on like the focus of my art, and like also, you know, my dream of like basically unconditional love, and emulating that, and kind of bringing that to other people, but also bringing that, you know, in my bigger vision to the world, is like I wanted my products. Paul Newman, fellow Aquarius, inspired me, because Paul Newman, he had his salad dressing. And when I was a little girl, I used to eat his salad dressing all the time. I used to love it. And I used to go to the Body Shop a lot when I come. Yeah. And that was another thing that really inspired me, was to go to the Body Shop. But it's funny, actually, one thing, when you're a kid, think back to when you were a kid, because you will see a lot of your dream. You will see there are these memories and experiences that we have had as children that have led us to our destiny. So, like, I was literally, my life was playing with spirits, going to the Body Shop, making flower potions, and taking pictures, and and reading tarot. So literally, I decided when I grew up, well, I'm not really grown up, but when I grew up, I said, I want to remain that little girl me, that the things that inspired me when I was growing up. I just decided as an adult that I was going to basically make my whole life about what inspired me when I was a kid. And I looked at other people where the magic had left their eyes, you know, the magic had left their body. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so sad. Like, what, you just have to kind of like give up. Like, at some point you just have to be like, I'm just going to give up on my dream.
It's like a little candle just being snuffed out.
Yeah, and society can do that. Sometimes the pressures of security, false security. Because the thing is that your life is, again, it's your infinite right to create your dream. And so the more people that know that, the more empowered society will be. Because a lot of people feel not empowered enough to break free of the traps.
Right.
And I think that there are some traps. So I suppose the most important thing is being brave, having the courage to step out and saying, you know what, I'm not going to do that. And yes, I might have to pay the price. And I might have to pay the price for 10 years, and I did. And I definitely had struggles, but when you look back, you remember, well, I was authentic.
Right. You're like, I was true to myself.
I was true to myself. I did what I needed to do, even though it was difficult.
Well, and it's so funny. You just very gracefully answered my last question without my asking it. I'm like, oh, how wonderful.
Nice.
Well done.
Well, I am a psychic. So.
Exactly. I was just like, this makes complete sense.
I already knew what you were going to ask me, Pam.
Because I was going to ask, like, what you would tell your younger self or younger selves that are out there listening to this. But it sounds like...
That's nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I would definitely just tell her... Well, one of the things I would warn her is don't get distracted by boys, okay? Because that's been a problem.
The listeners can't see the look in my eye of like,
I need to listen to my friends more. Don't get distracted by boys. And I would tell her, I would just say, don't ever stop believing in yourself and always follow your bliss. Always follow I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but it's true. Follow your joy. Follow what makes you happy. This life is too short to be anything but. And stay true to yourself and stay loving yourself. I think this comes this point when you become an adult where loving yourself is kind of essential. Like,
yeah, just a little.
Yeah, like we can't, like as a teen, it's kind of like, loving yourself is very risky at times.
Yeah, because you're changing so fast and you're trying to figure out who that self is.
Yeah.
And like, you're like, I'm going to try something out. Oh, I don't know if that was the route.
Yeah. I didn't love myself as a teen. And even in my early 20s, still, the older that I get, I actually said to someone recently, I actually like getting older. Because the older I get, the more I genuinely, and just like without ego, it's not even an ego thing, but I just genuinely love myself the older I get.
That's how I feel. Yeah. We're part of someone said to me that, well, a lot of people say to me that it's good that I get mistaken for younger.
Yeah.
And I'm so used to getting mistaken for being younger because of how I look. But in some ways, part of me doesn't like it because I'm like, don't you see all the work that went into this? Don't you see everything that I've done? Because I'm really into what I've done. Yeah. I'm really into who I am. And I'm just like, don't you see all this experience? And it's like, no, they see like a little baby angel face. And so it's like, on one hand, yes, that's flattering. But on the other hand, I'm like, I really like what I've built in here. And I want people to see that. And yeah, it speaks to that like self-love. Like as a teenager, I remember feeling like, well, I can't really pretend to be anyone else, but I'm not even sure if I like me. So I'm just feeling ambivalent.
Yeah. I relate completely the same. I actually, I was as a teenager, I was very moody and I just would take pictures all the time and smoke cigarettes outside school. I was trouble. I got in a lot of trouble as a teenager. That's one of the reasons why I was like, when I have kids, like, I'm a little scared to have a mini-me because...
Oh, teenagers are bonkers. I work with them on a consistent basis. They're all bonkers.
Right, yeah. No,
I'm just warning you now, your teenager's going to be bonkers.
That's
what being a teenager is about.
I know, that's true. Especially a mini Anousha. Uh-oh.
Oh, man. You could get a mini Pam. I used to climb trees and read books. Read the books in the tree.
We actually have spoken about how we would have been such good friends at school. We've actually spoken about that many times. We would have been best friends at school. I just know it.
Oh, yeah. We would have snuck in all the goth clubs. You would have danced with all the boys. I would have been like, oh, look, a cobweb in the corner.
Yeah. Silly boys. Oh, wow.
Exactly. It has been such a pleasure, and I love that you brought up the body shop because I
Yeah.
collected the lip balms.
Yes, me too. And I went there always after school, and it's funny, but yes, that's like my goal, with Anousha products, and when they come back is, establishing a charity and establishing ways in which I can contribute to the world. And I'm a big believer in, duality. You give, you receive. It's important to be in the rhythm of the universe and to be doing equal amounts of both. So it's just my mission, like give, I guess that's the Aquarius in me.
I was gonna say, and I
It
think
is.
that true giving is also receiving. Like you
Yes,
can't really
of
give
course.
unless you can
Of
also
course.
receive.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like darkness and light. You can't have one without the other. And I will not lead us on a tangent.
I was gonna say, I
But
was like, oh, I'm closing, and then I got
yeah,
distracted by lip balm.
I know.
Classic
Yes, we
me.
got distracted by the bump. I was going to say darkness and light, it's important, a bit of both. And that's one of my spiritual missions, is like through my work also releasing my shadow, right? And, that was essentially one of the aspects of the spiritual industry that I think needs to be shaken up a little bit is, shadow is super important.
Yes.
And we can't run from this stuff. We can't glaze over it. We can't affirmation our way out of the shit. The reality of the situation is that it is so important for us all to face our shadows and for us to face the dark too, because when we do, there's infinite light on the other side. And so that's where I feel that the light can come in. And
Yes.
that's, as an artist, where I've always been so inspired is from the dark, because that's why I love, working with masks. I love, I love where my art takes me, because it takes me to the darkness, and I become infinite light there, so it's like both, right? If we can celebrate both parts of ourselves, then we are activating self-love in an authentic space rather than just wallowing in light that kind of makes the dark even bigger and kind of not in a fun way.
Then it comes out in really weird ways.
Yes, it does. Like I've had a lot of light, like crazy light people who are like all about the light. And, I've had a lot of them like kind of, I feel that there is a judgment thing there, where it's like, no, that's not what this is about. This is about spirituality. To me is just about meeting yourself honestly and meeting other people honestly. And when you can meet yourself, again, we come back to authenticity. When we meet ourselves there, that is where the light can come in. So hopefully that is where we will all be going.
Yes.
And that's where I want visions to be a way for people to come and get dark with me.
Yay! Yay! I love that that's my reaction to darkness. Anousha played me a clip from the show, and I think she was expecting it would scare me, and I was just like grooving along. I was like, oh wow, I really love the spaciousness of like the darkness of this. Like I was really into it.
Pam's eyes lit up when she heard my dubbed demonic voice for the show opening. She rode the wave. It was wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think being authentic, I guess in closing is
yes,
embracing all sides of yourself and of the people in your life and of the things you encounter, and know that things do have duality, and that's what they are. Nothing is all light, nothing is all dark.
Exactly. So. And don't be afraid of what, fear is something that you need to face. When you face it, it no longer makes you weak. And in fact, then you can become stronger by just facing it. And so my last point is, if we can face fear, then nothing can stop us.
Yes.
And so don't run from fear. That's when we're talking about the money situation and everything like that. Is remember, tune into yourself, ask yourself, how do I come from a place that's not fear? How do I come from a place of love in this moment? And if you find yourself in a thought system that might be fearful, tune in with yourself and remind yourself, this is just a moment. I'm going to face it head on. And then all of a sudden, the fear kind of dissipates, and then you're
Yeah.
able to create. You're able to create. So
Well, fear is the only thing that gets smaller as you run towards it, is what I
exactly,
read. And I was like, oh, I
exactly.
like that.
Yes, and of course, if we're all obsessed with light, then that's difficult to face, right? Because then a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people walk around and they have their fears, or they have these shadow feelings come up and they feel wronged, or they feel like, oh, this is too heavy or too dark to confront. So I just think that, yeah, that's such a great way of looking at it, and especially when we bleed into what we are here to create in the
Mm-hmm.
world, how we can do that more authentically and efficiently and
Mm-hmm.
with more joy.
Yes.
It was so wonderful to speak with you.
Oh,
I loved
Anousha.
this.
This was so much
Yeah, it
fun.
was.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Why Not Both. If you would like to learn more about our guests, such as the one I interviewed today and all of the other people from this past season, you can head over to our website, which is wnbpodcast.com. Please make sure to like and subscribe to us on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss any interviews. And if you fancy, leave us a review. Thank you again, and I look forward to chatting with you next week.